Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Trish and Gary Ramsey
Hello.
coming to you again from my home office, and we're here for part 2 of this remarkable story, Healing Cancer, Freedom from Fear. Thanks, Gary.
Oh, you're very
It's so
welcome.
good, and
I
it's
love
so fun
doing
to be
this.
with you.
It is
It's
fun.
so fun to be
It's
with you.
fun, and it's fun to be with all of you as well.
We're talking about cancer, but you know what? This is going to be fun. Hopefully it's going to be fun for everybody, too.
Right?
Right?
It was for me.
You'll hear why later. So, for those of you who haven't yet seen part 1, just a quick recap. Part 1 was all about Gary's pretty horrific cancer diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
A diagnosis in which he was told he could literally die at any minute.
Mm-hmm.
And in part 1, Gary shares with us just what his life was like before cancer and what his life was like really literally immediately after that diagnosis.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
He went from a life of fear, a life filled and fueled by fear, to a life of fearlessness.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
And here in part 2, we're going to hear Gary's story of how he found his path to healing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes.
And how fearlessness was actually his guide.
It's very true.
Fearlessness was his guide.
We left off where I had been in a park where I had had this entire experience. And of course, after I roused from that experience and finally realized, oh my God, what does a person who's dying, like, what do you do? And it hit me like, wow, I guess I should tell somebody. And I remembered the doctor said, you've got to tell somebody. So who do you call? I called my sister, which is my oldest sibling. And I tried to explain it. She really didn't understand it. She again, I learned very quickly. I had to be very careful at how I did this because some people almost thought it was a joke because I'm a big joker. And
you mean they didn't believe you?
They didn't. Yes, because it's just so out there in left field. Mm-hmm. So what did the doctor say? Oh, he said I could die at any minute. Oh, come on. Do you know what I mean? That was really the conversations. Yeah. So I got much better based on her call. It was shock. I didn't know what I was going to do. She even asked me, what are you going to do? I said, I have no idea. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then the first thing that occurred to me is I had a performance coming up because I sing opera that was going to be in Texas, of all places, based off of an opera I had done here in New York. And the next thing that came to my mind, it was like my mind was blank and these things would just fly in. And I thought, I've got to contact that producer, which I did, who was also in shock. Although I handled his call better than I handled my sister's call. And again, he couldn't believe it. I said, I have to cancel this. I'm being told, this is what I've been told. He sent me blessings, support, whatever I needed, and I told him I would help him in any way I could, let me know. And I started, on that phone call, I was already near my house, but I kept walking around the block during that call. And then I was walking finally up the block, that call ended. And I was blank again. It's like, okay, I did that. I called my sister. That's done. I went blank. Then the producer came in. I called him. Then I went blank again. And then I go to put my key in the front door. And there in my mind is Farrah Fawcett. And I'm thinking, Farrah Fawcett? Now why? Because it had dawned on me that Farrah Fawcett, before she had died of cancer, had been flown to Germany. And I remembered at the time, I had asked people that I knew, people who were kind of hooked into that, cancer scene. And I was like, why would they fly her to Germany? And the response was, oh, Germany has some of the top treatments of cancer in the world. And I thought, Germany? Wow, I should just go up and research Germany because maybe they have something for me. I just thought, well, this would be cool. Because everything was so grim from what I had been told at the office. By then, I don't know what the timeline, but it couldn't have been more than an hour from having heard the diagnosis between these two phone calls. So I flew up the stairs. I get on the computer. I go into just Google and researching, like clinics, Germany, all of that, holistic, just whatever. And
surfing,
all these
surfing, right?
I am surfing. And to be honest, I can't even tell you exactly how I did that, but I did. And all these things kept coming up. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, on the, how on your screen you get the screen and then you have these things that pop up on the right. This thing pops up, which is like this white, extraordinary palace in this paradisical setting. It just looks like a major paradise, and it's got, I don't know, like there's things like the Taj Mahal. It's like the Taj Mahal of whatever. And I look at it and I go, what is that? It has these beautiful pools, this exquisite scenery, and it goes, it's a hospital. And I'm thinking, wow, now that would be a place if you're going to die, there it is. You want to die there, or at least I wanted to die there. And so I thought, what is that? So I click on it, and I'm going, oh my gosh, they also treat cancer. And then I'm starting to get like, oh, this is impossible. And then I realize they're in Mexico. And I'm thinking, oh wow, this is like one of my favorite places. So I'm literally like getting more and more excited. Then as I'm reading the literature, I'm thinking, yeah, but my problem is so major. Maybe it's not going to work. And then I thought, you know what? I can't take this anymore. I have to call. So they have a number, and there was a number. It's also a toll-free number here in the States that coordinates between the Mexican facility and people who are in the States. And sure enough, I get on the phone and literally explain the problem. And this woman looks at, it says to me, well, yes, we have handled very difficult cases. I said, yeah, but this is supposed to be rare. She says, yes, they're not common when tumors are badly placed. But it does happen. And we do them. We handle them. And I said, yeah, but they're telling me it's very, very, very risky here, and it can prove fatal. It has a very low percentage of, success. And she said, yes, that's true in the States. And I said, yeah, but what about with you? And she said, well, no, it's not. And I said, but why? And she said, well, because we look at it from another perspective. And literally it was like, bang, another perspective. I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? Just another perspective. And I thought, I kind of like your perspective. I think I'm gonna follow your perspective, which we did. We started discussing, and then we started getting deeper into it. And then, what does she say to me? She says, this could all go a lot faster if you have your medical records. Do you happen to have your medical records? And as I said in part 1, I had no idea why I asked for my medical records, but there it was. She asks me, and I go, as a matter of fact, I do have my records. They're actually right here. And she said, oh, that's wonderful, because now all you have to do is scan this and this in, tell me this, and then I went through, I was reading to her what the information she needed. And even on the phone, I was like, oh my God, this is a miracle, because I don't think I've ever asked for medical records in my life, except on that day.
And especially since you were going to die, you didn't think there was a reason to.
There wasn't
right?
even a reason to, and I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know what I was going to do. And of course, had I gone to Sloan or Hackensack, which was my recommendation, they could have just wired. I mean, the records could have immediately been sent directly to the hospitals. I didn't even have to deal with them, literally. But again, that was just how magnificently things were just unfolding for me.
Yeah, and can I pause?
Sure.
Press pause for a minute, just to reflect on everything that you said, because I think it's so telling and so powerful how these hours evolved after that visit, right? Because you were in this state of fearlessness. You were in a flow.
Yes.
You weren't thinking, I have to do A, B, C, D, and E, and I'm going to do this now, and I'm going to do this next, and then I'm going to do this. You were literally in what we call flow, right? You were just in the flow, going moment to moment to moment. And each moment led you to that next step along this path to this pop-up on your screen, right? You didn't know you were going to go to your computer when you called your sister.
Had no idea. And Farrah Fawcett, I mean, I can't remember exactly how many years before, but it was not a recent thing. This was 2015.
And that just came to you when you
came to me.
Right. So
out of nowhere. Literally out of nowhere. Literally, all I can tell you is I was putting the key in the door.
Right.
And boom, Farrah.
Right. So
God bless you, Farrah.
I'm sorry, I'm excited and I'm interrupting you.
No, that's okay.
So you were in this state of flow that just led one step to the next to call your sister, and this image of Farrah in Germany, and then the computer, and then this pop-up I remember in the book, the upper right side of your screen.
Upper right side of the screen, that's
and then
correct.
The call.
Yes.
So it was this just kind of unfolding.
Completely
just being moment
unfolding.
to moment, which for me, myself included, as much as I talk about the power of fearlessness, is sometimes hard to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, I think the surrender for me came out of the diagnosis. That I felt kind of helpless. So that, it's just like when you're up against the wall. And then I just let go. Like when people say, just let go of it. Right. Literally, it let go. It was let go for me, in a sense.
Right.
And I just gave over to it. And it was amazing to me because immediately I would notice my mind would just go blank and then something would come in. And it was one thing, just one specific thing like Farrah. You know what I mean? And then, anyway, on that phone conversation, I then had to fill out a very long questionnaire that was sent to me. There were several. Because I found out at this facility that they examine you on every level. It's not just about your medical, although they need that as well, but it's about, your psychological, your personality, your history, this was one of the most extensive. That took me hours to get through. And I was going a mile a minute. Plus, then my sister had called other people, and then I started receiving phone calls. As you can imagine, I started getting, a tremendous amount of people very concerned, calling me up. So there was a series then of me starting to get into the flow of starting to handle my life now in this new circumstance, which was kind of like, it felt like a whole new experience of learning how to, fly an airplane or something. In other words, it was like I was having to go through and figure out. I knew my life and I knew what it was, but I had to figure out, okay, now how is my life going to go within this whole new, with this whole new, what do we want to call it, situation that has now been laid over it. And it was almost like relearning things and getting better at talking to it with people. Too many people were becoming, more and more shocked, upset. I was getting a lot of calls even that evening, and people like, Gary, I don't understand. And there was a lot of that because even though like I would try to explain it, my sister would try to explain it, it was very hard for people to understand. And then finding this clinic, this facility in Mexico, which was near the water, it was right on the Baja. it provided with me, or for me, I should say, all the comforts, all the things that I always wanted. They took care of everything for you. You were surrounded in a completely organic, clean environment. It was all going to be done holistically, although they were going to be able to, perform surgery on me. So it was an approach that for me made me feel good. And I think we even discussed that, we don't want anybody out there to think that this facility, which I'm not even going to give the name of, is the be-all or the end-all or the solution. What it is how well we, the individual, respond to it. And for me, I found my perfection, which, of course, further advocated me being in a state of fearlessness.
Right.
I did not, because I knew if I walked into Sloan Kettering, and nothing against Sloan Kettering, they have healed thousands upon thousands of people. I knew for me, I was not walking out.
Mm-hmm.
That I knew. And I didn't know what would happen in this Mexican clinic, but I knew that that was a better choice for me. And even if I died, which I didn't think about at that particular point in time, but I did later on, that even if I died, I would rather die there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What you just said brought to mind a couple things. I want to not forget to ask you about the airplane trip there, because I think that's a pretty important experience you had, and it tells us more about actually how to deal with fear when we're having it.
Right.
And then just the notion that you said that this is Gary's story. This needn't be your path to healing if you're dealing with a health challenge or even a cancer diagnosis, but it's Gary's story. And I think a huge take-home message for me, and that I think it can be for everybody who's watching, is that your story was about fearlessness and how it brought you to be in touch with your own wisdom, your own inner truth, and what felt right to you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that creates a state of literally ease in the body. When we're in touch with our core, when we're in touch with our own inner knowing, it creates a state that is actually needed for healing. It creates a state, we've talked about this last time, a parasympathetic state of nervous system innervation that's needed for rest, repair, rejuvenation, and healing, and clarity, and wisdom, and all those ideas that come to us when we get out of the way, when we stop trying, when we get rid of our shoulds and our to-do list. So your fearlessness brought you to a place of connection to your inner being, and this flow that just guided you. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks. And then, I'd like to hear next, if it's okay, about that trip. Were you going to go to that next? Yeah,
so,
the airplane trip.
This all happened very quickly. The diagnosis was on a Tuesday at about 4 something in the afternoon, or I was out of there at about 4 something in the afternoons, because timelines are hard. And then that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I was on a plane to Mexico on Sunday morning.
Wow, I don't remember that. I don't even remember that it was so
fast.
Soon. So a lot happened in those days.
A lot happened, and the only thing that I want everyone really to know is that I learned very quickly, and I'm sure those of you that have been in this situation probably already know this, there are a tremendous amount of people who have a lot of opinions about what you should do with your disease and sickness or situation. I was being bombarded, in a sense, during those days, while I was trying to wrap up my life, get everything in order, and get on that plane and get all the things I needed to make the journey and the trip, which was highly stressful. Plus, remember, I'm very sick. What I didn't mention is that right after that diagnosis, and right after I knew how sick I was, all my symptoms got worse. As a matter of fact, I barely had any symptoms before that diagnosis. But when I had that diagnosis, it got worse. The weight loss became just frightening. the blood loss through the urine, all of a sudden there was blood loss all the time through the urine. And I had only had a couple of incidences prior to that. I was becoming weaker. I was becoming more ravenous. I was constantly hungry, which was another big problem because on the phone, they had told me, eat as organic as possible and stay away from all processed sugar, which I had been doing. So really, that was another miracle and blessing that had been going on. And so I was running to wrap all of this up, and I was being hit with obstacles. I was being hit with phone calls. I was getting threatening emails. I was getting terrible messages. It became almost an endemic of everybody else's fear being projected out onto me, who was the one actually facing this horrible situation. And those of you out there that are in this, just remember it is part of being ill. And then you've got the doctors that, like the doctors here, had done the same thing to me. And so you are really being bombarded by a lot of negative energy. And having Mexico was like my oasis. My dream was to get to my oasis. And even if I died when I arrived, it was almost like a victory for me. Because I thought, I have to get out of this. I have to get out of here. I cannot die like this. That is unacceptable to me.
And just one quick
sure.
interlude, quick interlude. Your fearlessness about dying was still completely with you. You were willing to go whichever way you were going to go.
I totally was.
You weren't rushing to get to this clinic because, I got to see if I can just
save myself. No.
Yeah. You were
I had to get out of the environment I was in, which was becoming more toxic and more negative, literally by the hour. It was astounding to me. Things that people said and did that I just couldn't even believe.
People that were terrified of your diagnosis.
Terrified of my diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And again, blessings to all of them, because remember, it came out of their own fear and terror. Mm-hmm. And I did recognize and realize that. Even at the time, I recognized it. So this is not a condemnation. They are lovely, beautiful people. And my diagnosis and my situation had pressed the panic buttons in a lot of people. Mm-hmm. In a lot of people. So, this is not I'm not trying to, beat anybody up out there. But I do want to honor those of you that are going through that. And then I finally did it. I made it. And it was the morning of going to the plane, which was very, very, very early. I had to hire a car. And I was too weak by that point. I couldn't have done any kind of transit anyway. But I hired a car, and boy, I got in that car. It was gorgeous. I mean, I talk about this in the book. Breathtakingly beautiful. And it was like, I've done it. And then I get to the airport, and I had already arranged, that I was only traveling very light, that it was a medical issue. There was no problems getting through, the securities. Everything was magically perfect. And I remember it was just like a breath of fresh air. And then I got on that plane and we took off on time and we're flying through the air and I'm thinking, oh my God. And there's nobody there, right? The plane is practically empty and I have 3 seats all to myself. And I thought, oh, this is fabulous. Plane is going nice and smooth. And, we can unfasten the seatbelts and I'm laying, kind of sideways on there. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom, we hit this turbulence. That was like psycho. It was psycho turbulence. And it's one of those, and you've all been through that, where it's like, and the first initial one was such a jolt, and I hadn't had my seatbelt on, and maybe I was kind of in a half sleep state. So maybe they had put the bell on, maybe they hadn't, I don't know, but I wasn't in it. And I kind of even left my seat. You could feel it's like I hit it when I came to. And I could have sworn that I felt something happen in my lower right side, which is where the tumor was. And I was almost convinced that that tumor had erupted like Mount Vesuvius. It had just gone. And that was the first time I had severe panic and anxiety. I mean, like drop dead. Mm-hmm. And my heart, the sweat, the heart pounding, and also, just being woken up like that. Mm-hmm. It was almost like I was in this sweet nirvana. And then, wow, this is what I woke up to. And I thought, oh my God, I think this is it. It's happening. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I thought, what do I call the stewardess and say, do you have a pill for dying? I thought, what am I going to do?
So you weren't afraid of dying. You were afraid of what was going to happen if you died on the plane, right?
Yes. It was like, whoa, how do I do this? And do I alert somebody? Do I not? And I'm thinking, oh my God, I never thought it would end like this in the middle of the air. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. And it was like, whew, I grabbed it. And that's the best way I can say. It was like everything was running away from me, and I like grabbed it. And I pulled it back in, and I said, Gary, stop. If that's what's happening, we're not dying like this. We're not going to die in a panic. We're not going to cause a panic. I'm not going to tell anybody, because what are they going to do? Even if they landed immediately, I was going to die within 6 to, or whatever he told me, 7 to 10 minutes, 6 to 8 minutes. And I thought, okay, we're going to sit here, we're going to breathe. I started working, as I told you in my last one, I'm an Alexander Technique teacher. I started working on my directions, they're called. I started working on my breathing. I started becoming much more grounded. And then I timed it. I was like, okay, 1 minute. And I thought, we're just going to go through a beautiful countdown. I'm going to go out beautifully. I set myself up so that it would look like I was asleep. And I thought, couldn't be much closer to heaven if I tried.
Because you didn't want to be trouble for the plane, right?
I didn't want to cause any panic, and I didn't want to be in a panic. Yeah. And I thought, if I start alerting people, they're going to get me in a panic as well. I'm going to have the same problem I had that I left.
Right.
With hysterical people.
Yeah. And
for what? I was told that's how it's going to happen. And as you can probably already guess, it didn't happen. I passed I waited 10 minutes. And on the 11th minute, I said, no, I think I was wrong. But I thought maybe the doctor was wrong. So I gave him 15.
Yeah. And the doctor said how long it would be?
I think he said like 7 to 10.
Okay.
But it could have been 6 to 8.
For those of you who didn't see part 1 yet, we encourage you to watch it. But just to clarify, this idea that the doctor had planted in your head was technically true, that you could die any minute, was because this particular tumor was so placed that it could do what's called embolize.
Right.
Break off and cause an acute, what's called myocardial infarction or heart attack, or could cause an aneurysm, cause a stroke, etc., etc. Right. So that was this fear that was instilled, I wouldn't say instilled in you, but that was the fear that the doctor was trying to, the reality the doctor was trying to get you to grasp.
Get me to grasp, which is why the tumor was so deadly in the first place, because I'd never heard of a deadly tumor. So there you have it.
Yeah, and that big turbulence just felt like something maybe moved, and oh my gosh, something moved, and I'm going to die now.
And that was a great lesson to me. And that was also the lesson how fear can really overwhelm the situation. There was nothing really wrong, except that I was perceiving something wrong because I had let fear run amok. And thank God, literally, I just grabbed it and I yanked it back in. I was like so close to like a freak out where I was going to involve other people. And I didn't do it. And I was so happy, and I thought, that is never going to happen again. Of course it did later on. But I I was getting better and better at catching it. And when I was faced with something that real that the doctor had presented, that was a real possibility, and not going there, not allowing myself to go there.
So that's a really another powerful take-home message, that you weren't completely 100% free from fear all the time.
No.
And as you shared with me a little earlier today, before we grabbed our chairs and sat in front of you, sometimes you have fear today, but it's how you deal with it, and how you transform it, and how you shift it, and how it doesn't run you or drive you or paralyze you. And you're able to do that on the plane.
Yes.
And we're going to talk with all of you about that in part 4, on how we can actually...
3.
No, part 4.
Oh, there's part...
Part 3 is what happens at that clinic that we
part
haven't
4.
told you the
Sorry.
name of.
Yes.
Part 3 is all about the specific tools and therapies and experiences you had at that clinic that was truly a mind, body, spirit healing experience. It addressed healing on all of your levels, which is kind of my... how I love to think about healing. It's just physical, mental, emotional, and if you accommodate some sort of spiritual notion of your experience as a human, is spiritual as well.
Yes.
That's part 3, and part 4 is your advice and tools, and I may share some of mine as well, and how do we free ourselves from fear?
Yes.
So we can be fearless in the face of whatever's going on, right? Because no matter what's going on in our lives, if it's a cancer diagnosis like you got, if anybody out there is dealing with a similar diagnosis,
yes,
or a challenge, or a financial challenge, or a relationship challenge, or a life path, whatever's going on, if we are fearless, if we have peace of mind, isn't that really all that we need?
Yes.
If I'm not worried, if I have no fear, if I can have equanimity and peace, isn't that just make everything okay?
Right. Exactly. And what I did on the plane is I had allowed myself first to run to the future and imagine all of these scenarios in my head about oh my God, it's on a plane, there's other people here, yada, 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 they don't know anything. I let my mind run to a future that didn't exist, even though I was on the plane, and that was true, but all of those other things that I put in my head were not true. And then once I grabbed it and brought it back, then we found out that it was all for naught. There was never a problem in the first place. And you grabbed it and you brought it back after that turbulence, and you were with it. Correct. You actually used, Gary will teach us that in the fourth video, you use the tools that you use in your Alexander practice and also in your acting teaching to really be with that experience, to be with that emotion. Correct. Rather than to have it drive you. Correct. Which is often what fear does. Fear can keep us going in motion because we think we have to do A, B, or C to fix something or to avoid something, right? Or it may paralyze us. Yes. So your path to fearlessness is not fighting the fear, but bearing witness to it. Correct. And then shifting it. Correct. Yeah. And I like to use the word embrace. Embracing the experience. Yeah. Yes. And I like to just think of it as being here now with what is. Great. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I agree. I talk a lot about the power of now. Yes. Eckhart Tolle. Yeah. Yes. Be here now. Ram Dass. Yes. Be here now. Yeah. So, tell me, is there anything else you want to add? No. Just that we will continue. Thank you, Gary. All right. Thank you. Thank you all. And stay tuned for part 3, where Gary is going to tell us all of the details of this truly remarkable clinic that he went to in Mexico, and all of the various therapies and healing experiences, modalities, including conventional surgery that he had. All right. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye. Utterly.